So I'm going to start off with economy because there's a lot of stuff that's going on with economy right now. Tom, I want to kind of start off with you on almost 4 in 10 Americans worry about paying bills and numbers surpassing Great Recession era. 4 in 10 worry about paying bills at the levels of pre-recession era. So what does this mean? And how many people are going through this today? Let me read this to you. 40% of American adults worry about paying their bills, with one resident, Angela Russell, noting the grocery store is just outrageous right now. Everything has gone up, clothing, my insurance. This concern suppresses levels seen during the 2008 Great Recession, where 37% were worried. We're talking about 16 years ago, Tom. Total household debt in the U.S. reached a record $17.69 trillion in early 2024, a 1.1% increase from the previous quarter. Greg McBride, chief financial analyst at Bankrate, emphasized that moderating inflation doesn't mean prices are coming down. They just aren't going up as fast. More than a quarter of Americans have resorted to skipping meals due to high grocery costs, with 80% feeling a notable increase in prices. Many are spending 60% of their monthly income on essential expenses, indicating significant financial pressure despite the growing economy and low unemployment rates. Tom.
So there's two things going on here, and we have been talking about it, and we've been encouraging people, hey, look, you know what, a side hustle, living conservatively, that's kind of the tools you have to fight against this. But it is not surprising that now the surveys are coming out. Everybody was ignoring it when we were talking about it, and the news would be out there. Wall Street Journal talked about it, Barron's talked about it, that there is 1.1 to 1.2 trillion in credit card, meaning there's people have less space on their credit card to buy something for an emergency because they're adding to the credit card every month on groceries and things. Oh my gosh, if you're paying your power bill, your cable bill, and groceries on a credit card because you can't pay it at the end of the month, oh my gosh, no wonder that more than a quarter of Americans are saying, hey, we're going to skip a meal, we're not going to go out to dinner, whatever it is.
Cereal.
So yeah. And then the whatever it was, General Mills CEO, whoever that guy was, that said, hey, cereal for dinner, let's try that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, ramen noodles, just like we're all in college again. So number one, the Biden economy is just as bad, and as we've been saying it, the cumulative inflation of 30% is now showing up as people are screaming, and the higher rents, thanks to inflation, are causing people to get evicted. Right now, the middle class is in the middle of a freaking apocalypse. And the apocalypse is the Biden economy. And we're going to talk about it later today, but it really pisses me off that right now with the presumptive Harris candidacy, they're talking about, oh, everybody talks about Harris as not being fair and everything. I'll tell you what I want to talk about is very fair. I want to talk about her economic record. I want to talk about what she did in California. I want to talk about what she has for Americans here, because people are hurting and they need freaking help.
Let's stay on this. High rents cause evictions to spike by 35% in pandemic boom towns. Have you guys ever experienced being evicted? Have you ever experienced being evicted?
It's humiliating. It's terrible.
It's one, humiliating, and not only humiliating. Imagine you're married. You have to go to your wife and say, can't afford to pay for it. Imagine you're going back to your family saying, hey, man, I can't pay for it. Can I come back and move back with the family or friends or a couch? Now, people go through different financial difficulties, but these numbers here, just to kind of give you an idea, eviction and pandemic boom towns have surged by 35% compared to pre-pandemic levels, driven by high rents as a result of pandemic-induced migration to the Sun Belt. Cities like Nashville, Fort Worth, Jacksonville have experienced evictions increases in 31%, 25%, and 14% respectively. The rent spikes were fueled by the influx of new residents during the pandemic, which outpaced the earning of local residents, according to Realtor.com. Rent increases peaked at 17% year over year in early 2022, particularly in Sunbelt cities. Although the rental market is still challenging for lower income renters, recent trends show a decrease in rent prices in Sunbelt. Austin, Texas saw the largest drop at 6.6% in April, while Nashville and Jacksonville reported declines of 5.9% and 5.6%. Adam, thoughts on this?
Look, times are tough, man. We've seen since we started the podcast 2020, the stimulus checks that went out during COVID, the money printing that went out during COVID. I think at one point it was 40% of all the money that was ever printed was done in 2020. Now I'm seeing data that it's as much as 80% has been printed since 2020. Whatever the number is, there's been a shocking amount of money printed. And what does that lead to? That's led to inflation. Now, if you want to basically put America in a bubble, versus the rest of the world, America is performing wonderfully compared to the rest of the world. But we have high standards here. And it's not exactly comparing America to the rest of the world. It's comparing America to where are you better off now or are you better off 4 years ago? And as James Carville famously said, it's the economy, stupid. There's a difference between the numbers and the data versus how people feel. And people just don't feel that America is trending in the right direction. And you can't tell them to feel a certain way. You actually have to show them. So here's what I could tell you about personally. I've never been richer. PBD, you've probably never been richer. Tom, Vinny, life's good if you're actually doing good things. You know, it's the K-shaped economy. The rich are getting richer and the poor will always be poor. There's a difference between poor and broke. Poor is like I literally make no money. I have nothing going on. I'm just poor. I'm desolate. Life's not good. But broke is a different thing. Broke is you're working, you're hustling, you're trying, but you just can't get ahead. And I feel like the middle class is getting squeezed and squeezed and squeezed, and they just can't figure out how to get ahead. That's why they said there's a difference between Wall Street and Main Street. If you're looking at Wall Street these days, the market's at all-time highs. It's been over 40,000. The S&P, I know NASDAQ took a hit. Bitcoin, everything that's going on there. But here's ultimately my point, because it's going to come down to an election year. I'm seeing the messaging that's going out from the Trump campaign. I'm seeing the messaging that's going out with Kamala campaign. Everything's going out there. If abortion is your number one issue, vote Democrat. If the economy is your number one issue, vote Republican. If the border is your number two issue, vote Trump. If climate change is your number two issue, vote Democrat. If safety and security of America is your number three issue, vote Trump. If DEI and making sure that you're checking all the boxes is your number three issue, vote Kamala Harris. I mean, it's pretty simple at this point. Things have changed significantly, and people are basically saying, let's get this ship headed in the right direction.
But Pat, because obviously nobody knows me. Nobody looks at me and goes, oh, Vinny's the money guy. I'm the funny guy, right? But from a pattern perspective.
You're making more money than you've ever made before.
In my life. Oh, but I'm saying now I'm becoming that person. So I'm just thinking about of trends, PBD. So in 2001, the market, Adam, you mentioned, was at an all-time high, right, Pat? 2007, and then it all crashed, right? So now you said we're at an all-time high. That's a pattern that people should be looking at, right? The S&P keeps going up. Billionaires like Zuckerberg, Buffett, Bezos, they're selling their stocks. Politicians are selling more. 1 in 3 households, like you guys said, are struggling to live to cover expenses. Credit cards, all-time high. Commercial real estate's collapsing. Small banks are going bankrupt. Record CEOs stepping down. How long do you guys think that this is going to last until another one of those crash is going to happen? Because to me, because we said it with this administration, it feels like they're just hanging on so it doesn't happen under this regime.
Right. So a couple things I want to give you guys feedback, because sometimes when you hear some of these stories, like I remember one time, I'm at a meeting, and at this meeting, the guy says, can you go on a 60-day diet from the news? It's a 60-day diet from the news. Can you go on a 60-day diet from the news and radio? I said, okay, I'll try it out. That's the last time I ever listened to the radio. I've never listened to the radio since 2003, right? Can you go on a 60-day diet from listening to all the scary stuff that's going on and just kind of listening to some people that may be reasonable and they're talking across the board and it's optimistic about the future looking bright versus, oh my God, it's the end of the world coming here. Can you do that? Yeah, I can do that. Okay, see what happens to you. I had a friend of mine, a relative of mine, I told her, I said, listen, for whatever reason, you watch and follow every single one of the conspiracy theories that are out there. You follow all of them. Can I tell you something? What? You look miserable. Says, what do you mean? I said, I'm being serious with you. You look miserable. You look so unhappy. But what if it's true? And what if it's true? And what if it's this? And what if it's that? And what if it's that? I said, okay, no problem. Follow the news. Stay paranoid. But be optimistic. But there is a balance of being so caught up in what's going on that you're just not a good husband. You're not a good friend. You're not a good brother. You're not a good wife. You're not a good employee. You're not a good leader. You are so on the edge because it's like everybody's coming after you, right? It's tough to be around someone like that. I'll give you the example here on some things in an economy like this for some of you that are watching and saying, Pat, I'm feeling exactly what you guys are talking about. No problem. When Vinny first came here, he came 2 years ago, okay? Comedy market in LA shut down, okay? It's like it was nothing going on. You had to all this mask stuff, especially if you're even having some positions that are slightly conservative like Vinny does, right? He comes here. A year later, he chooses to stop drinking. He stops drinking, I think, May of last year, 2023. May 31st of last year. So what's the date?
Exactly.
May 31st of last year, stops drinking, right? So that's now how many? Almost 14 months he stops drinking. Starts going to church. All of a sudden, I see him at church. Never misses church. Starts making decisions on different ways he lives his life. Income starts changing. He starts inspiring other people. Other people are being attracted to him. He starts making money. So if you're watching this, and yesterday, one of the ladies yesterday said such a powerful thing. One of the main ladies, I won't say her name, she manages $1 trillion of Goldman Sachs' money. Wow. I mean, she's the brass, heavy. I think she's a report or two away from David Solomon. And we had a good meeting with David Solomon yesterday, actually a very good meeting with him as well, just to see what his thoughts were. I asked her, I said, let me ask you a question. When families are creating wealth, what mistake do they make? And it was so interesting listening to what she said. Tom, I don't know if you remember her comments. She said, here's what happens. So sometimes when you first come to money, people will sit there and they'll say, yeah, I want to go growth and I want to put my money in the stock market and I'm good with this money being in growth for the next 20, 30 years. And you do, and then a massive crisis takes place, then they choose to take their money out of the stock market because they're afraid. Then John turns around and says, during the pandemic, when the Dow went down to 18,000 from 36, whatever the number was, 2 of my clients took all their money out. Like, let me explain to you what happened during that time. You pretty much could have gone from $100 million to $50 million.
Yes.
In a span of 90 days. Yes or no, Tom?
Absolutely. That is what happened.
And check this out.
Yes.
On paper. But if you go from $100 to $50 million and you all of a sudden said, man, this is going to get worse, you take your 50 out. You know what happened 90 days later? It went back to $100 million.
Right back. But you just locked in your losses.
No, but do you understand what just happened right now? You just lost $50 million for panicking. So you asked me a question, Pat, I want to buy a place, a house.
Yep.
What did I tell you when you and I spoke about it?
You said, wait for, you said like.
No, I'm talking in Hamptons when you asked me, we're in the car, we're driving. You said, Pat, do I buy a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom condo house? What do I do?
Yeah. You said, well, think about, marriage, kid, if your mom wants to come, if people want to come. So I'm thinking 3 to 4 bedroom.
I said, within the next 5 years, if you're going to be living in this place for 5 to 10 years, go buy a place.
Yeah. And I said, I'm not going anywhere. So.
Okay. I said, in 5 years, what's the likelihood of you being married and having a kid?
Pretty positive.
Pretty positive, right? Okay. Then you need 3-4 bedrooms, right? To have that. So if you're thinking long term, you're fine. In this time, folks, no matter what you do, if you're part of a community that doesn't find a way to change yourself and improve yourself, and you get too caught up in blaming the economy, blaming Kamala, blaming Biden, blaming Trump, blaming everybody, the same thing's going to happen when the economy is good and the economy. That's a cyclical cycle. Do not fall for that trap. The contest we announced with Minnect, guys, is a contest that's very unique. A lot of you who have big plans of 2024 where you want to do second half of the year, this contest that was announced, effective July 1st, goes till August 31st. The winners of this contest will have a chance to meet Dwayne Johnson and also be invited to be on stage, recognized in front of nearly 10,000 people, where people are going to see you on stage, 10,000 people, your face with your Minnect handle for people to be close to you. This is an opportunity for you to network with thousands of people, of them directly knowing who you are. And the way to compete for this is either you're an expert and people ask you questions, or either you compete as a user asking others questions. Right now, in the lightweight category, the leader right now is Bryce Mitchell, UFC fighter. Number 2 is Caleb Altmaier, which Caleb is a pastor, I believe, out of Washington or Portland's got a big mission. He buys strip clubs and builds it into facilities to create rehabs for dancers, which is very interesting. What he's doing. For trafficking, yes. And then you have Jose Alveranga, who is 3rd place for lightweight. Rob, if you can zoom in a little bit. Middleweight, we have right now, as the ranking goes, Samuel Riley, then we have Matten Hakkar, and then we have Aaron Borgman at 3rd place. Heavyweight, we have Dennis Panev, then it's Candace Owens, then Dr. Calvin Ing. Home team, Vinny crushing it as usual. And then you have new users, signups. Mark Cook, 1st place, then it's Ronald Silsky, and then Russell Morgan, and existing users, Shaw, Matthew, user 0, have asked the most questions. If you haven't yet started participating in this, we had a client reach out to me the other day, ended up being a $100 million client business for somebody I refer to. There are people asking questions about homeschooling, parenting, kids, marriage, finance, preparing for an interview, many business questions, day-to-day questions, political questions. When in the election season, have you ever seen a season where you can go ask some of the biggest influencers in politics, what do you think about it, Cuomo? What do you think about it, Candace? What do you think about it, Tulsi? And they respond back to you. Never in the history of America have we had a time like this that you can actually be able to communicate with some of the biggest influencers on the left, right, and the center and says, what are your thoughts on this? To be able to make better decisions for your family. The QR code at the top is right there. Download the QR code. And if you got any questions here for the folks on the panel, Rob, if you want to pull up the Minnect handle for the 4 folks we have here, any one of these, you can ask me, Vinny, Adam, or Tom any questions that you have.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.